All right, we are live. How was it at CMX Summit the other week? Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, it was great. It was great. It was really cool to see so many community pros asking questions, because it's rare that anyone even knows what my job title means. It does.
Yeah, it's growing rapidly. Like just how many different podcasts, different events, different groups and stuff are popping up. It's really good to see.
Yeah, it was cool. It was very cool.
I'm going to tell you what then. I've got a bunch of questions to dive into, so I won't make like the introduction too long. But like, how would you describe who you are and what you do?
Yeah. So, well, I'm Max. I head up community for a brand called Finimize, and Finimize is a platform that gives bite-sized investing insights. And we're now about, I guess that started out as our sort of daily finance newsletter that tells people what's going on in the world of investing. We're now over 1 million subscribers to that. We have our premium subscription, which is where we house our premium content, but also our premium community in there too. So my role, I guess, is to make sure the whole company is aligned on how we're serving our members and making sure that's an interactive experience, but also how our members are aligned about how they can help each other improve the experience. So we do that through typically or predominantly through events for our newsletter community. So they're all member organized events, take place all around the world. There's now one happening pretty much every day, and they're all organized by our members, which is crazy considering it's finance. And then our premium community is largely group chat based, that you can only access through our members. And then we've got a bunch of premium events around that. But the whole idea is that it's very difficult to learn about finance and investing just by consuming content. A bit like everything else. Like, we want people to participate, meet some other people, hear from experts, and kind of get that whole experience. So that's kind of where community fits in, and that's what we do at Finimize.
That's really cool. And I think that's such a good approach. Like you said, it's almost all-encompassing when it's community. Like, it's not just reading, which is very passive. It's like when you're going to events, when you're connecting with other people, it's a totally different experience.
Well, I think it's like it's the modern way to learn anything now. Like, I can't remember the last time that I wanted to pick up a new skill or hobby where I didn't go and immediately source, okay, where's a community I can join that are open to people that are learning, and there's other people on the journey. So yeah.
Cool. I mean, before we dive into the questions, like, what does your role in that look like? This is a huge, magnificent thing going on with Finimize. Like, what is your role on, let's say on day-to-day or week-to-week basis? How does your exact role look like?
So I guess one of the beauties of Finimize is that when I joined, it was very clear. It was a very small team, maybe 5, 6, 7 people. And it was very clear from my CEO that he had this planned to be a community from day one. So because of that buy-in, I guess we're one of these new, I guess I call them community 2.0 businesses, where community's remit certainly isn't managing the forum and doing the social media. It really is, how do we make sure that community sits at the center of every team, every part of our business, as well as managing the groups and the social media. I spend a lot of my time, I spend most of my time actually sharing the community insights across each of the teams. A lot of that is like finding creative ways where we can pull our unique insight out and make sure that informs our product team, our brand, our sales teams, like everyone across the business. How do I make sure they're really informed? That's probably a large part of my role. And then there's sort of the ongoing management side, making sure the teams are pointing in the right direction, making sure our metrics are hitting our targets. And then I also do a lot of work to continually try and push how can we get our members to engage in our mission more. So for example, we get our members to create content in ways that is valuable for them, and get them to collaborate together. So it looks like managing our brand, managing any of our external comms, managing our premium members, that whole experience, group chats, and then I've got people on our team that manage all of the events. So I'm fairly hands off from the event side now.
Cool. That sounds like a lot of work, and I love the fact, it sounds like half of your role at least is actually internal community discussion too. Like you're taking the external community's advice or ideas or insights and bring it into the internal community, and making sure the right people are hearing it too. I think that's sometimes a bit which is missed out of people's job role.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so important. Because the way I see, I guess, chief community officer roles going or VPs of community going is I think that you end up having every touch point of the community or the internal community, making sure that it's reporting into you. Because ultimately, when it comes to communicating with, the C-suite or your board, you need to know the members better than anyone. And the more they're bought in, like that becomes even more important. So everything, I think, from user research, customer success, social, anything that involves engaging with your members should kind of come through community.
Cool. I mean, that's a really good way to pivot onto some of the actual questions people have asked. Carolyn from a company called ADEA, she asked, what metrics do you report on to your executive team? And, what metrics kind of show a healthy community? So could you touch upon that briefly?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess as we have your standard metrics that I think you should report on anyway, but the North Star metric for our premium community is subscription retention. So we're always looking at monthly subscription retention, and that will be cohorted. So we'll look every week and every month at the retention of people that engage in the community versus people that don't engage in the community. That's a powerful metric, but it's very difficult to change on a weekly basis. That's probably our North Star metric from a premium community sense. And then from a free community sense, it's all about breaking down that event funnel. Mm-hmm. So how many people are signing up? How engaged are our hosts? How many applications are we getting to become new hosts? How fast do they move through that funnel to become a host? How many events are they hosting on a monthly basis? How happy are they? And then that is the final thing, which I guess in the last year, we really, really focused on NPS as like the best score for like how happy and how much value do your community get. So whenever we launch new community products, we find new ways for them to come together. We're always running NPS. And I run NPS in every single event. At the end of every single event, everyone gives an NPS score. We run NPS on a monthly basis for every one of our group members, and we run NPS for anyone that is part of the community too. So we kind of keep those to help us keep our innovation on point.
Yeah, and do you ask for like feedback too with the NPS, or is it more just the score itself?
Yeah, it's the score and then a qualitative comment.
Cool. And just one quick question about the metrics, like how is there a particular tool or software you use to track everything? Like how do you keep that perspective of everything?
No, I wish there was a tool that could do it. We're across so many different platforms. I think really it depends what stage you are in the community, because I think personally I believe that if you're really early in your community building, you can kill your community with metrics.
Yeah.
Because you end up optimizing for growth really early, when actually what you want to be optimizing for is building that like core group, building that culture and strengthening those bonds. So every time a new person enters that community, that's where that community magic scales. But I think as you become more mature in your community, I think it's really important just to have consistency. Because communities are so random, especially when you're launching new products. The amount of things we've tried and tested that just have been awful, and you kind of look back and you're like, why did we ever think that was going to work? It just gives you context, because you can see that NPS score on a weekly basis. You match that with all of the other metrics that you're working on. But yeah, we'll set a benchmark of 70 normally on an NPS score for something that we're going to continue to innovate with.
Okay, super useful. I think what you mentioned about like early stage communities and what to focus on, and there's quite a few people asked like a similar kind of question here. So I'll kind of summarize what they said. Yeah, so the two are so Leonie and Julie Morgan both asked something along the lines of like, what are kind of the essential ingredients to growth in a community in the early days? Like, you said just now that you shouldn't focus just on growth or maybe even on growth at all. But what's your thoughts about an early stage community and what you should focus on?
Okay, so two thoughts on that. The first one, if you come to what you should focus on when you're starting out, I believe that it's all about getting to the unique insight. There'll be one insight that you can dig out of your members, no matter how small that is, whether that's 5, 10 people that have first joined, that first are new to start your community, or you're talking, 50,000 people on a newsletter. I think until you've hit product market fit or you've built a product, the community should be all about understanding what's that unique insight that no one knows about this audience. And I guess the best way that community managers can do that is by events, by constantly talking to your members, testing new things with them. And once you land on that unique insight, it can sort of change the course of your company. A good example for us is we did this with our premium subscription. We landed this on a unique insight that like learning finance is like learning a language. That came after we'd had thousands of people attending our events. Once we hit on that, it sent the company in a really cool direction. So I think in the early days, you just focus on that, focus on NPS, because your members will be honest if they're achieving what they want to achieve, or are they getting out what they wanted to get out of. And I wouldn't really focus on too much else, to be honest. I would just keep trying to delight and amaze users and find interesting ways to get to that insight.
Cool. And is that for you? Is that on a very kind of almost unscalable level in the beginning? Is it literally chatting with these users, hearing what they need, and trying to find a way to make that happen? Is there any more you could elaborate on that?
Yeah, 100% it's unscalable. It gets. I would push. You'd be amazed at how big you can get unscalable things to work. I would push it until the whole system starts to creak, and then we start looking at, okay, now that's maybe it's a platform shift, or maybe it's a reorganization of your team. But yeah, 100% everything that you do in the early days, it should be unscalable, but it should also feel unscalable, because those are when you get magic moments of your early members are like, wow, you've got to train 3 hours to come and talk to me, or whatever it takes, where people are just blown away and impressed by how much you care. So yeah, I would 100% keep it unscalable to the start. And I think you can really, it probably wasn't until we were at about 100,000, 200,000 people on our newsletter that we were really starting to hit the ground running with our member organized events. Until that point, we just spent so much time really digging into what our users wanted, how we could help them, and all that sort of thing.
Cool. I just wanted to say Leanne's just joined us listening live. So hey, Leanne, I'm running through some questions that people have submitted in advance. But if you've got anything you think you'd like to ask Max live, you've got the chance to do that in the comments, or I can even add to you on screen as well if you want. So entirely up to you, Leanne, if you want to come on screen or just watch and write in the comments. Hopefully we'll have a few more people join. Usually there's more people joining live, but maybe the date change also threw some people off. Cool. So yeah, that's really good. Some following on from that, Leonie had another question, which you've almost touched upon already. Actually, were there anything in particular which you implemented and it really took off? So you mentioned, the idea of learning finance is like learning a language, like that took off. Is there anything else which comes to mind about things which really took off?
Yeah. Yes. And I guess this answers to the second point we didn't quite go into around like growth. I think with community, I just wouldn't get distracted by growth tactics. I just don't think that's your job, is to scale the business. I think if you do your job correctly, that is a byproduct.
Yeah.
But you're not a growth hacker. You're not a growth marketer. You're a community manager, or a community professional. And I think because of that, you have a slightly different mindset. And I think what we do is we look to put fuel on the fire of any moments that we see happening, those exciting things that start to happen, or relationships that start to build. So an example of that was when we launched our member events program. That was purely because we'd started running events in London. At a pub in London was the first one. We just sent an email to some people. I think my CEO sent an email to our London readers and said, I'm going to the pub, join us. And then we uploaded a picture on Instagram. Someone that reads the Finimize newsletter in Boston said, hey, you should do this in our town. And we just gave them the playbook. And then that just continued to grow, until we're in 35 countries having monthly Finimize meetups. So really it's about finding those things that can scale quite naturally.
That's amazing. I mean, that's quite an achievement just for people. It really shows that you've built like an incredible brand that people love to be part of. If they're literally kind of reaching out to you saying, hey, can we make this? This is cool. Do you have any what led to that, do you think? What was your secret, or what did you do right, which kind of led to people doing that?
Yeah, I don't think it was the community team, to be honest. I think it's we built a problem that people needed solving. And luckily we were ahead of the curve. But if you think of now, the number of people around the world that have started investing, and the number of people were put off by how complicated and how it's full of, people were going to finance events and just seeing grey-haired dudes in suits. They were like 40 years older than them. They're like this. And then they go to a Finimize event and they're like, oh, okay, I'm not crazy that I'm interested in this stuff. There's other people. So we were just sort of right time, hit a real need that we faced ourselves. And then it just started scaling from there. And the product was great. There was nothing else like we had. We hire amazing analysts, and it was just no one else was doing this at the time. So yeah.
Yeah, cool. And is when you start making that playbook to kind of help you to scale that process, like what was that process like? Did you just distill what you did in the London event and scale it, or what was the playbook like?
Yeah, and I guess that's another way that we look at things, is like a nice way of thinking about it being unscalable, is that we said yes before we even had the playbook, and then that just forces you to start mapping out we then go in granular detail on like, okay, what do we do? What does work? And you have to keep it so simple so that someone else can pick up that guide on the other side of the planet and run an event exactly as you do. So we really broke that down, and then really broke down the metrics from awareness to attendance to NPS, and just started putting it out there. And then we get feedback from the hosts, like, how can we improve this process? And it sort of incrementally improves over time, and you're constantly looking to sort of improve those metrics as you go.
Cool. And any particular tips about working with those hosts and building a better relationship with them? Is there anything you've kind of discovered through working with them which has been really useful?
Yeah, it's a good question. So Michelle, who I think runs the CMX London chapter, she'd be able to answer this 10 times better because she's really helped us scale that to like a global level. And I think really it's about the same principles that it is about building a community. You just have to care. Like you have to care. You have to be ready to show up, because these are people who believe in the mission just as much as we do. And if you show any signs of like not caring as much, then why the hell are they doing it?
Yeah.
Whereas what people get from what our hosts get when they show up is like, we're going to be 10 times more passionate than anyone else you've met about our mission, because we genuinely care about it. And it's one of the things that you look for in a great community manager. It's like, do you care about these people and what we're trying to achieve together? So I think there's that. I also think it's about really, really listening to them and then removing as much friction as possible, because scale, if you have that magic around a brand that people want to be ambassadors for and host, the only problem you've then got is scale, because the playbook's pretty simple. You build these hosts, you train the hosts, you then elevate them to become leaders so that they can train more hosts.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's how it scales. And any piece of friction, so whether it is, how difficult it is for them to upload the event into your platform, how difficult it is for them to promote the event, how difficult it is for them to understand the guides, how difficult is it for them to find a venue, all of those points of friction will stop you from scaling. So once you've got the process, just remove the friction and keep listening to your host.
Cool. And do you have a process for like removing friction? Is it like proactively trying to figure out where friction might be? Or are you waiting until people have said something? Like, what's that process like?
So same as normal, like we'd have a quantitative side to it. So we'll look at those points of friction. So for example, we might see a drop-off rate between the people that are applying to the people who actually end up hosting the event.
Yeah.
Or we might see a drop-off rate between the people who are hosting 2 events versus 4 events. And then it's kind of about playing with that. So it's really important to us that everything we do is really high quality because we're a finance brand. So we played with dialing down the friction in certain points. We actually play with dialing it back up, because the more friction you put in that host process, the higher quality your hosts are going to be. So we try and have it really high friction, multiple touch points, multiple rounds that they have to go through to become a host. And then once they're a host, we just start removing as much as possible. And that is really the hosts are going to give you that feedback. They're all in a group together. They're giving us feedback for every single event.
Wow, sounds great. I mean, it sounds like there's so much, data and analysis which goes into this. Like everything you've done is very measured. Like, oh, we've checked this, we've analyzed this. Is that you who kind of sets all that up? Do you have like a data team who help you set that up? Like, how did you get that going in the first place?
Yeah, just discipline in measuring it. Because also, I think it's really good if you're at a startup, you're starting at a point where you don't know what's going to work.
Yeah.
And the only way that you can figure out what has worked is by measuring something. Even if you don't know what to measure, just measuring something and seeing if you can move that number is going to help you. And that's, I think NPS is great for that. But, our whole company is super, super metric driven. There's no reason why product will have a load of metrics that they measure and try and track and understand what they're doing to improve outcomes when community doesn't.
Yeah, makes sense.
But it's a nightmare to get hold of that data. So it's just about finding what matters to you in your business and then being consistent in measuring it.
Yeah, I find it's always confusing. There's so many things you can measure, that measuring everything consistently is the thing, right? It's got to be like a consistent measurement of how it's going over time and where to pull that data from and where to plot it. So I definitely need to upskill on that a little bit. Leanne, since you're here, is anything, I want to jump to some more questions which were asked in advance. Is there anything you would like to ask Max live? And like I said, you can also jump on screen as well if you like. I can give you access to screen if you're interested. Cool. All right, I want to invite you on screen with us, and you can bring whatever questions you've got. Just to let you know, you are being recorded in case you want to keep your camera off. But if you're happy to put your camera on, you'll be on screen in just a second. There you are. Hey, Leanne.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thank you.
The question I've got is about how you manage the scale and how you adapt things. Obviously, you've grown really big, quite a lot of pace, and you've mentioned you take the feedback from the people who are managing the different groups that you've got. So how do you kind of keep that balance between making sure people are keeping things energetic, adapting as things grow and evolve and shift, without losing track of that core thing of what works and the core of who you are and what you do?
Awesome, great question.
Yeah, it's really hard. It's just, there's no other way to think of this. It's really hard. And the thing that is difficult is focus, because, this is one of the reasons I think community managers suffer with burnout so often, is that you could work 24/7 if you wanted to, even if you had a 10-person community. The same is true with a 1 million-person community. And you just have to focus. And especially a group's a really good example of this. I can tell my members, look, I'm busy right now, so you guys, you need to be diligent on how this community is run over the next few days. And having that one they get it. They get, like, I'm trying my best here. I can't focus on everything. Same with our other community managers. And that really helps, like, just in the back of your mind, just knowing that it's okay if you don't do everything. Yeah. And when you start thinking like that, there'll be a few things that you have to do that just work. And that's where your time should be focused. Because if you want to try something new, something's got to give, and you've got to keep, dropping other things. So I think being really strict with yourself on where you can focus is really helpful for that. And if you've got a team, I think you have to be extra diligent, because community managers will work 24/7 because they feel like they're just constantly letting people down if they're not, or they need to respond to everything instantly. So I think it's that, and just identifying the bottlenecks. There's normally something you can do, and it either means that you need more resource, it means that you need to elevate some more membership roles, so you can actually delegate a lot of your work to your members too, and then just cut the stuff that's not important. We all do stuff in our day that is like you know you couldn't be doing it, and you kind of have that feeling of like, oh, not this again. And I think as soon as I feel that, it's like, okay, I shouldn't be working on this, because if I'm not excited by it, our members aren't going to be excited by it. So yeah.
Cool, good advice. Is there anything else, Liam? Was there anything else in your mind you wanted to bring up?
That was it for now, I think.
Cool.
So, yeah, thank
All
you.
right. You're welcome. It's up to you if you want to stay on screen or not. I can turn you off if you'd rather come off for now.
I'm good either way. So.
Cool. Let's leave you on just in case you think of something else. So yeah, cool. I'll go back to the document of questions I've got here. Let me see. All right. So actually, the guy who I'm working with, I'm working for a community or product called Daily Prompts right now. And so the founder, he says, he had a question. He said, community, in inverted commas, tends to have like quite a broad scope at the moment. How do you guys define community at Finimize? And also, how do you tend to prioritize around that? Yeah.
Yeah, so I think for me, like I said, it's anywhere where our business and our members are working together to achieve our mission. And that is how we set our focus for the future. Is like, what can we do to add value to our members with our members? So for example, that's where like user-generated content came from. We knew that our members wanted more content from us, but our analysts and the whole of Finimize is about building really curated, just the most important things. So the members start going, well, look, I work in electric vehicles every single day. Like, I would love to share some of my insights. And other community members also told us, like, it'd be great to hear you've got really intelligent people in the community. Like, there's only niche content that they could create. And, you know, it's about getting out of the way and saying, yes, let's make that happen. So that's all about having a really clear shared, you know, we use a community promise, like what's the promise we make to our members and our members make back to us. But there's loads of different, you know, a mission statement works just as well. So because we're perfectly aligned, that just gives us a constant roadmap of like, how are we improving the experience for our members around that.
Cool. And is it the same kind of promise or mission statement throughout the entire company? The whole company, whether it's products, whether it's whatever, works on the same kind of community-based statement, is it?
Exactly. We did a lot of work to get to that point, but you know, we now have all of our members, everyone on the team aligned exactly on what our promise is to our members. And that's what I mean about that unique insight that we got hold of. No one else has. No other company knows this audience like we do. And it's now become a very, very, you know, it's become a very big audience. Like, being at the heart of the retail investor community and knowing them better than anyone else in the world is a very valuable thing to have. But not something that if someone put a metric on it 2 years ago, not something we would have focused on. We just knew it was important, and we knew it was important to us, and it happened to become important to a lot of other places as well.
Cool. There's another kind of follow-up question which he had as well. Pretty specific and niche, or maybe the answer is no, but has there been a time when the community has really strongly wanted a particular feature or event or something, but it didn't really fit or align with your vision of the community or vision of the product? And if so, how do you deal with that situation?
So I think like we just keep a long list of ideas in the community. As things start to bubble up to the top and you get common requests, we'll make sure that's like shared across the team. And yeah, totally. There's loads of times where people come up with ideas that we're like, no, that's not what we do, guys. That's not what we're here for. And that's cool as well. Because I guess this whole concept of being really, really aligned with what's the value that Finimizers get and what's the value that we give means that it's really easy to say no to things. You know, for example, we help each other become smarter investors. That's what we're here to do. And if someone says like, hey, you should become a trading platform, it's like, that's got nothing to do with what we're trying to achieve here.
Yeah.
So
cool. Yeah. What does that conversation look like? If you're having that conversation with a member, like what does that conversation tend to look like? Thanks.
I don't think it's something that fits with what we're trying to achieve here, and then maybe point them in the direction of, you know, some other places that can do that. But those conversations like reinforce the whole thing, because then people have got a clearer picture of what we are trying to achieve. And then like I guess the community tactics around that are the more you can reward people that are, you know, giving positive contributions to your community and moving that forwards. the more other people start to realize, okay, this is the kind of behavior that you want. And it kind of works in both ways. Like, yeah, don't be scared to say no.
Yeah,
members.
That's true. I read it somewhere. I can't remember who wrote it, but they said, often when you do these things in public, when you kind of set the rules quite clearly in public to people who haven't followed them, actually it's almost better for the rest of the rest of the community. Almost feels protected. Like, oh, this guy's got my back. This guy knows that this shouldn't be happening here, and they've got my back. So
yeah, I think the way I kind of use that in our team is like, be the voice of the lurker at all times. Try and be the voice of the lurker when you're let's take a group, any community space that you create. It could even be on public social media. If someone acts outside of how we've agreed to act, the 90% of people that will be lurkers in that room, in that space that you've created, will all be thinking like, hold on, that's not what we do here. But they don't want to stand up and they don't want to make that statement. Some people might, your 10% of active and vocal people will say something, but it's your job to lead that and set the tone of like, look, we don't do that here. And it just starts spreading really, really quickly.
I love that. You mentioned the opposite of this just a moment ago, like rewarding and incentivizing, your best users. Is there any particular things you can mention there? Like, what are some of the incentives or rewards which you guys use at Finimize?
So I think there's a few ways. I think it's very difficult to find things outside of status and access for incentives. I can't think of many ways. Like, everything kind of does get boiled down to status and access, I think, when it comes to incentives. But it's about finding how you can do that in a unique way that aligns with what they're trying to achieve. So let me give you the example of our hosts. People always ask me, like, why the hell are people hosting events for Finimize? And I asked myself that, and in the first time, it's like, we've just had an event in India where they flew across 3 different cities in India just to host Finimize events. And you're like, okay, why? And this Dig J, shout out to Dig J, the guy who did it, he's like a JP Morgan analyst. He doesn't need to do this. Then you start to think, okay, well, what is it that you get? And just ask him, and he told us. But you start thinking that, okay, well, they've got a platform that is very hard to get access to. Having an audience of 1 million people that will read what you promote every day, it's very, very hard to get to and quite unique. The second is like people that are working in their day job. Everyone's got external interests and want to progress outside of what you're doing every single day. So this gives them an awesome way to do that. Thirdly, it means that you get to reach experts and reach out to people that you want to learn from personally that would never, come and talk to you because you don't have that 1 million person audience. And then finally, like, they're contributing to a cause that they care about. And I think this is actually sort of underrated, or the people that get how good it feels to give back, and it makes you better at your job, you have a wider network, but that's really, really important. And everyone, especially people that work in finance, know that financial literacy is one of the biggest problems that we need to solve. And now we have that platform and a way for them to do that. That's really what starts to ignite things. So I think we think intrinsically. I don't think extrinsic's works for us, but I think we think intrinsically, and it's normally around status and access.
Yeah, I love that. You're gone.
A question that's come up just based on a few things recently been said. Obviously, money can be quite a sensitive topic for some people. They might feel like they don't want to ask a silly question or be embarrassed about the situation and things like that. So what have you done to help people open up, feel comfortable, and be less likely to hold back and lurk?
Yeah, great question. And it is, a very difficult thing from the outside. Like it sounds like a very difficult thing for us to do. But what we do, and I think what really helps, is our community managers aren't investment banking analysts. We're just like the people joining the community trying to figure this out. And Michelle and I, will often talk about how sometimes the more you make mistakes in open, the more it drops those barriers. And the more you are the voice of this lurker. So when new people join, I don't know half as much as most of our community, but that's cool. I'm cool with that. And that then sets the tone. Once the first members grasp onto that and we sort of celebrate asking stupid questions, we make sure that's in our onboarding guidelines. Like, this is the room where you ask those questions that you're scared to ask around other people. It just starts to build that culture. So we'll codify it at some point, but when it starts, again, it's just about being active and engaged and being the voice of your community.
That's great. Good answer and good question. Max, correct me if I'm wrong, your background was actually in finance, right? Like, you were actually working in finance before. How did you get all this community knowledge? So where did you pick this up, and what experiences in the past kind of led to where you are today?
Yeah, so I guess the easiest way to explain it is this mission that we're on to empower people to make informed investment decisions. I was doing for years before I met our CEO. Or I was thinking I was doing it, or I was trying to do it. So I was working at a bank building a digital solution that would attract new and young investors. And then when I met Max, he was like, sorry, my CEO is called Max, not the third person. When I met him, he was like, yeah, that's cool, but it's not going to work, because it's actually the way you achieve this is by empowering people. And that was where it started to get me thinking, like, okay, well, we need to empower people, but you build trust through relationships in finance. Like, how do we start to scale that? And it was just that idea of like, yeah, but if we get this right, this is something really, really special. And then I joined the startup and we tried everything. And it was this rapid experimentation, never giving up, constantly measuring to see what worked, constantly working with our members to build it. And I think at the time, CMX was probably like the only resource that existed on the planet. Now it's starting to get better. But yeah, we'd read CMX, and I think we looked at Product Hunt. We loved what Product Hunt were doing. Kind of between those two things, we then started to pick up, small bits of information. Duolingo is another company that I just think are incredible from a community perspective. And we'd start experimenting with, what we thought was great about other products we like. We'd try it. We were lucky to have a big audience to test on, because that meant that we could run so many different experiments.
Yeah.
And we have probably tried everything in the community book about bringing our members together. And because we tracked everything and we're really diligent on keeping constant metrics, we started to know, okay, what's great? What do our people love? And then how do we do more of that?
Amazing. Was there any particularly big mistakes you made along the way? Clearly, when you're testing a lot, you make mistakes. Is there anything big which you'd care to mention?
Nothing big, I don't think. I can't think of anything big, because we wouldn't do a big experiment, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
Like, we'd always give it a safe environment to sort of test out. One of the funny ones that we always joke about internally is we were thinking, and I don't think it's a bad hypothesis, but it's like, okay, how do we strengthen relationships between members around interests that aren't finance related? Maybe that will work. Maybe you could have a running club for Finimize members. We thought that would be really cool. And we had an intern at that time, and I said, look, you've got this job. I know you run. We're going to put it out there. We'll see if we start Finimize running club. It was the most awkward thing ever. Like, it was. I don't know if you've ever been for a run, but going for a run with someone else that you've never met is the worst way to have a conversation. It was a bad idea. It was funny, but it's so not scalable. And yeah, so there's a good example of like small things that we kept testing. And trust me, if we started the Finimize 5K running club, I think we tried it with other things as well. You can imagine like the long list of other stuff that we have tried.
That's amazing. I love that. I mean, it's not easy to have a conversation at the best of times on a run, let alone with a brand new stranger talking about finance. Awesome. Let me see what else we had to ask. What about, obviously, communities, and that's a big word. Engagement can drop, engagement can change, things can happen. Like, how do you measure engagement? And you kind of touched on it earlier. What do you do if engagement does drop? Have you done anything to kind of spur on engagement or help people be more engaged?
Yeah, engagement's an interesting one because I guess it depends what format you're working with. And I guess it's more about what kind of engagement you get. So it's important to track it. And I think you need context whenever engagement drops. Maybe it's a holiday, maybe there just isn't much going on in the sector at the moment. Which is cool. Like, it's fair enough. You don't need your members to be constantly on your channels 100% of their day, like, especially if you're a proposition like ours. And then when it comes to driving engagement, let's take group discussions, for example. I don't want people's feeds constantly clogged up with not even low quality information, but just comments. So I spend a lot of time thinking about, okay, how do we encourage thoughtful posts? And when it comes to, how do we set the tone that, look, this isn't a place to put comments, this is a place for us to share thoughtful ideas. We now know, depending on what the moderator will post or how the moderator will ask the question, you could get a lot of engagement with comment style posts or voting posts or really quick flippant responses. And we also know different styles of question that provoke something a bit more thought-provoking. And we have, whenever we launch new group discussions, we'll have pre-scripted onboarding messaging that sows that seed of, like, this is what a good member interacts like, this is what a good post looks like. So I guess it's more about aligning, is the engagement next week what we expected it to be? Rather than, we need to just keep pushing engagement forward and forward and forward. It's like, no, we want to make sure that if we want, let's say you want loads of likes, do you know the post that is going to give you loads of likes? Let's say you want a really interesting comment thread. Do you know the post that is going to give you a really interesting comment thread?
Okay.
And I find that far more important, because that's another way that you'll send yourself crazy of just trying to drive up engagement, and you end up with, you might have loads of likes, but what has that actually achieved in terms of moving you towards your mission and your members towards your mission?
And what platform are you using for this? Like, you mentioned this, posts. What platform was that?
Yeah, so back to doing unscalable things, we've scaled our groups on WhatsApp.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we've got an engineering team that built some functionality that makes, like, application through to onboarding and launch very, very slick. But the reason that we did that is because, again, we started thinking through, what are we about? Okay, we want to make sure that people can get digestible investing insights on the go. So we don't want to keep sending them to a different platform. We need a platform that all of our members use. The number one platform our members use on every single day is WhatsApp. 2, we wanted our groups to be siloed. So there's loads of echo chambers in the world of finance. So we wanted to make sure we kept them small and, again, not too noisy. So they're about 100 to 150 each group. And then, we wanted to make sure that, that conversations were kept brief and short. This wasn't sort of long form essays. And again, WhatsApp was a really natural way to do that. So my problem actually is very rarely is the problem just driving engagement. Really, the problem is, like, how do I make sure when you check in, once, twice a day, there's something interesting for you to read?
How on earth do you, a lot of people, some people turn to WhatsApp to kind of manage a community. And I always get really lost in how on earth you can, what it actually looks like. How do you structure this? Because obviously WhatsApp's very noisy, right? There's no threads, there's no places to do that. How do you kind of deal with that with a group of 100 people, having some kind of, useful discussion there? What does it look like?
Well, so I don't think there's any perfect community platform.
Yeah.
Like, for example, we could host this in Slack, but no one in our audience uses Slack unless they're working in a startup. It's not really our audience. So you'd end up having to spend so much time trying to teach people how to download that app and then push them into that app just in order to have the same conversation that we're having before. So yeah, complete downside of WhatsApp is there's no thread, which is difficult. There's no channel breakdown unless we launch new sort of temporary groups, which we do quite often. And then, the other downside is if everyone is constantly posting, it's not a fun experience. So what we designed for is, how do we get a few thoughtful posts off different members throughout our week? And again, that's all about us. We've tracked all of the different posts that we put in, what kind of responses they get. Was it positive? Is it the outcome that we were looking for? And you'd be surprised. I've never seen the what's it called? The breakdown of engagement in groups. I've never seen that go wrong. We will always find you'll have 10% of your members that are super engaged, and 90% will chip in now and again or lurk. Okay. So it actually means that on a weekly basis, and we'll do, we might want to ignite the rest of the members, so we'll do some member relationship building tactics with that other 90%, but they're there just to watch the conversations take place.
And what kind of conversations are we talking? Is it, you mentioned earlier, types of conversations. Can you give an example of what that might be? Is it questioning? Is it like advice? Is it, what does it look like?
A classic example is like, hey, what platforms are you guys using? Really classic example, because it's like the first entry point. Then the second is another example is like, okay, what podcasts are you listening to? What books really helped you increase your know-how around investing and intelligence? What resources are you reading? What platforms do I go to get X, Y, and Z? And then I guess the second is like sharing ideas and trying to challenge each other's ideas and opinions. Here's my thoughts on the future of green energy and how I might go about investing in that. And then someone else could sort of come back and share. And that's why, for me, it's really important we don't have channels, or your first experience isn't via channels, because just a room of people that like crypto talking about crypto mean anything to anyone. What we love is when you have people with different backgrounds, different views, different experiences, all kind of working together to become smarter by challenging each other.
That's awesome. I mean, one last question on WhatsApp. I promise I won't bore you to death with loads of WhatsApp questions. How do you even do you have a Finimize employee or a Finimize community member leading each group if you've got lots of these groups going on? How do you structure that?
Yeah, so we'll have a Finimize community manager and analyst in every single group. And the moderator will be running off a schedule of content. So you're talking Mondays, we do our outlook for the week on what's going on, collect community members' ideas, what they're looking at for this week. Tuesday, we'll set the focus topic. So everyone will vote on what we want to talk about this week, what they want to learn about. Thursday, we gather together, either on a Zoom call or Twitter Spaces or whatever. And then Friday, we recap what we've learned. I'll kind of collate all of things, the best things of the members have shared, and share them across all of the groups. But yeah.
Cool. And this is premium, or is this for the free version, or is this a bit of both?
No, that's premium. I mean, like I said, I'd like to push things till they creep, but getting 1 million people on WhatsApp is not.
That would be insane.
I'm not interested in doing that right now.
Wow. Leanne, does that put anything else in your mind? Have you got any questions for Max at the moment?
I think you've just asked the ones which have come to mind straight away there. Yeah, WhatsApp's definitely a less common platform to be choosing. So it's been great to hear that you're using that and how you've kind of structured that so it isn't overwhelming for people.
Yeah, for sure.
The cool thing about WhatsApp that I always, whenever I speak to community managers, is for people that are literally just starting out or looking to build their skills in community. It's like, start a WhatsApp group. It's free. You can get 10 people in there and you can just work on testing different things that you come across. Perhaps it's different onboarding messaging, perhaps it's different challenges that you want to set. And that way, you just have something to play with. It's cool for us because it scales really well, because we're lucky to have a good team around it. But yeah, for if you're just starting out and you're not building something for a tech crowd, it's a really, really easy way to start practicing different community skills.
Yeah. And you're right, basically all of us are there anyway. It's not inviting people somewhere new, your people are already there, so you're just meeting them where they are. That's really cool. I've never heard of it done so well, so hats off to you. That's really cool.
The other, not to be WhatsApp's biggest fan, but the other thing that is different to platforms that are pseudonymous, there's no hiding. There's nowhere our members can hide, it's you. And we have I would say a 0% troll or spam rate because of and the groups are small and it's sort of hyper personal. and getting like a DM from me being like, we're just about to launch this group, can't wait to have you join, here's the things that I get out of the group, here's some rules for you to follow, and they can respond and I go straight back. It's just such a personal way of being onboarded into a community, that I like it quite. I think it works quite well for our stage at the moment.
Yeah, for sure. But I'm on the other side of the coin. Do you have any problems with that? Do you ever have, occasionally you get creeps in places who reach out, and because it's so personal, they might reach out to members in a bit of a weird way or anything? Do you ever experience that? And if so, how do you mitigate it?
No, we've got really strict guidelines on that. Basically, you'll be booted out of the group, and you may lose your Finimize subscription forever. But yeah, it hasn't happened yet. But yeah, we're super clear on it. And the groups are small enough that like there's no like, why would you spam 100 people? Like, what are you gonna get out of it? If they want to go and spam something, like head to Reddit. They love it.
I mean, that's the best thing about community, I think, is that actually there's a lot of social, it's kind of dealt with in the social way. You don't always, you've got rules there, but actually it's almost the social element of like the rest of the community being like, what the hell, why are you doing that? Which is almost more of a deterrent than the rules themselves, if it's a good community.
100%.
Cool. All right, I mean, we're slowly approaching the hour mark. I guess, Leanne, have you got anything else live you'd like to ask?
I think you've covered loads of great things. It's been such a great session, some great questions which have come from people. So it's been
brilliant. I mean, Max, just I guess to wrap up then, what's next for you and Finimize? Is there anything you can share, and what are you excited about at the moment?
Well, we're growing very fast, so it's trying to keep up with that really. Thinking about how we have our team structured, how we make sure everyone stays informed, and how we continue to over deliver for our members. So I think we're just going to continue to try and scale and keep that Finimize magic. What I'm excited about in community at the moment is I think there's a lot we can learn from what's going on in crypto at the moment, and I still can't tell whether this is the Jake Paul boxing match moment where are new people coming in and kind of faking community, or are they schooling the non-crypto community crowd? And the reason I'm fascinated by it is the moment I think community falls into 3 phases. I think when you're just starting out, you should just focus on trying to be community informed. Whether you're a huge company, you're a 10-person community, like just start with just surveying members and making sure you get a really good insight of who they are. Have one-to-one meetings with them, like really get that insight. And once you're community informed and your whole team are community informed, you understand exactly who your customer is and exactly what they want to achieve from your community. You understand exactly what they're willing to put in to help the whole community achieve what they're trying to achieve. Then that's great. Then look to becoming community-led. And becoming community-led is like this phase 2, which I think we're in now, of like try and decentralize as many decisions between your community members, really let them drive where your product is going, how your sales pitches are going, how your ads and growth team are working, like what content you're creating. Every single department should have their finger on the pulse, exactly what your community members are doing. And then I think the third phase, and just to finish off on that community-led, like find ways for them to take leadership and run with it. And then the third phase that I am excited by is community-owned businesses. And I think, so crypto aside, I think you've seen some of this with crowdfunded companies. So like crowdfunded companies have got such a powerful connection with their members because they have ownership in the company and they really want them to succeed. And they want to know every intricate detail and they want to do anything they can to help them. And then you're seeing it with public companies now in the last year. So like Robinhood just went public, Deliveroo went public, Airbnb went public, and they've really tried to ignite their communities around owning stock in the company. But I think what's going on in the crypto space is like this on steroids. So if you think of DAOs and social tokens, I think where it's most interesting. But if you think of it being completely decentralized, there's no central owner of the company. There's a group of 10 of us, and we're going to come together And the more we create value for each other, the more people are going to want to join. The more people that join, that means that our the worth of our coin or our token grows in value. And you kind of have this perfectly aligned extrinsic and intrinsic motivations. It's a debate. I'm still not sold yet that it's like the golden bullet that's going to solve everyone's problems. But I think they're doing some really exciting things on, decentralizing community ownership, decentralizing decisions down to like, who should we hire next? How much should we spend on office space? Like all of these questions that we kind of run as a company. Could you theoretically completely decentralize that and incentivize your community in a way where you achieve the outcomes of your members? So that's where I'm looking at the moment for some inspiration.
Wow. It's it's exciting times, and it's it's really taking off, and especially this NFT is come around the last few months. It's mind blowing what's happening in the NFT world as well.
Well, what's really cool being at Finimize is like we get to see like the heart of two storms. So we've got the retail investor boom and we've got the community boom that's happened in the last year, and watching those two interact together, personally, I think is why I'm super bullish on Chief Community Officer being like the place that people want to be heading towards right now, because it's a role that doesn't exist in the C-suite of public companies. Like if you're Procter and Gamble, having someone in your board or in your C-suite that knows your customers better than anyone else on the planet is going to be really powerful. Adding to that, if they own shares in your company and this investor boom keeps coming, that's going to be even more powerful, because one thing people will always care about is their share price going up. But those skills, they're community skills. And if you can do that at scale, like I think, NBA teams are now starting to launch Discord servers and launch NFTs. And I think, that requires community skill that not many people have. So I think if you're looking for a growth role, a role where you can grow in your career, like it to me is a no-brainer, that the community skill set is sort of rare and the one that can fill that gap.
Agreed. It's exciting times, and honestly, it's been such a huge, I don't know if you feel the same, Leanne, but it's been such a huge wealth of knowledge today, and it's like super inspired me just to keep going with what I'm doing. And every time I have a chat with somebody who's heavily in the space right now, it just gives me an extra drive to be like, okay, this is a really cool space to be in, and there's a lot of potential where we can take it. So thanks so much, Max. Is there anything else you wanted to share with us, Max? Any place we can find you? Anything you wanted to shout about before the end?
You can find me on Twitter. It's probably the easiest place, and I'll answer any DMs that anyone has, or if anyone wants to know the playbook of how we did anything, just hit me up. I've always found value in the more I share, the more I learn. So yeah, super happy to do that. And if anyone, I think I was talking about this last week, if anyone does land a new head of community role, chief community officer role, I beg you not to go and ask for permission and validation of the rest of the team on what you should be working on, but to go straight to your members, get the community insight, and then start leading that company from the front, because everyone is now looking to us to launch and run and own community-led businesses.
Amazing. What a great way to end. Thanks, Leanne, for all your great questions too. And anyone who listens to this in the future, I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Cool, I'll stop recording now.